Good evening, everyone. Tonight, extra special show. We've got a draw stream, and more importantly, we have the principal of cakes, the captain of the Paddys, the giant of the gingers, artist extraordinaire, tabletop role-playing game author and player, and the man who makes your minis look real, Paddy. How's it going?
Right, I was waiting for what were some of the ones in the Sandlot? The Sultan the Slam, you know? The Great Hambino. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I've been wanting to have you on like forever, but for some reason, like something always comes up, like somebody else wants to promote something. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll ask this person this week, and for some reason, it just took me forever. But it's good to finally have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad that it worked out. I totally get the same thing, because I think a lot of what I want to do is a lot of what you do, and like, you know, just trying to help people that maybe haven't figured out streaming and needs a little help getting along. You know, I do a lot of that too, and you know, sometimes you end up realizing, like, man, I'm stacked. There's so much good stuff out there to talk about. It's hard to get through it all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that, because my intention was never, I want to help people. Like, that just sort of, I just wanted to talk to people.
Oh yeah.
Who knew what they were doing, who were better off than me. And it just sort of ended up working out that way, you know?
Oh, nice.
So,
well, if you were asking for people who knew what they were doing, you asked the wrong guy. But I'm glad to struggle bust my way through it.
Yeah. I just, originally when I started doing the streaming thing, I didn't really intend to. My whole thing was, how can I get people, and at the time it was more focused on comic books, but how can I get people who know how to make comics to tell me how to make comics, you know? And there's only so much you could just ask people.
Yeah.
Let's see, is this going to make it better or worse? Why not? I was like, okay, well, you know, we'll try the whole interview thing. And there was one guy who made a mistake one day. He was on Twitter, and he's like, you know, if anybody asks you to go on their YouTube channel and talk about your project, you should go. So I, like, 20 minutes later, like, hey, buddy, you want to come on my channel?
Got him.
And the funny thing was, I had like 8 subs at the time, and like 7 of those were backup counts. So,
oh, nice.
But
my favorite things. It's like, my thing only has 7 accounts, or my thing only has 7 likes. Where were you? Making 6 accounts, bro.
And hey, since we're at that point, let me just mention, so for anyone who is watching this on YouTube, go down to the description and you can find out how to find Paddy, both on Twitter and on Rumble. That's his main platform of streaming choice, where he's got several shows. If you are new to my channel, well, thanks for coming. Hey, why don't you, whatever platform you happen to be on, give me a like, give me a follow, and I'll have more fun stuff. But how did you decide? Well, first of all, how did you decide to go from tabletop role-playing game player to somebody who wants to make them?
Oh man, that's like a 30-year-old question there. Mostly because, and I was funny because I was talking about this with Todd Blackwall and Victor Gorchev, who's in chat. Hello, guys. Hi, Michael. Hi, Ultra. But I was talking to him about growing up and being kind of poor and being like, well, I can't afford all those books, but I did have like the small handful of books that I did have. And I believe I remember reading in the rules saying that you can come up with whatever you wanted to. And so I started and started jotting down ideas, compiling monster tables and all that stuff. I mean, I think when I finally played, I think I was 11 or 12. I know I was in middle school, and my papa got me into it, and I was just enamored with it. And I was making like paper craft terrain even back then because it was the height of 3.5, and so having battle maps and such was like a big part of it. As far as publishing them goes, I didn't know that you could do that. You know what I mean? I think for the longest time, publishing was such an enigma because you had to be somebody worth publishing. So I didn't think much of actually getting published. I just kept everything down in journals, and then hopefully eventually it would become something else.
Very cool. And because I mean, to me, it's like there's something different in a person that like switches off between like, oh, I like to play these, and like, I should really start selling these.
Right. I think recently, going from taking the stuff that was in my notebooks and then trying to actually publish them for people to see, I was very inspired by Vendor Satanis, as a matter of fact. I was falling out of TTRPGs mostly because of the way that the culture of them was going. And just thinking, well, this isn't for me anymore. That's fine. I'm an adult. Maybe that's the problem. I've outgrown these things, and these things are for the kids. Maybe it is me. Maybe I am the problem. But then I realized that no, I don't think it was that. I think that the people who had made these hobbies great, whether it's comics, video games, or tabletop role-playing games, the people that built those types of things got pushed out, and generally for wrong thing. And this isn't necessarily a culture warrior thing, so much as it was, oh no, there are people who have been ostracized from this thing that they've loved their entire life, and I'm one of those people. So I really wanted to show people that no, that you can't just get kicked out of your hobbies because you think of a certain way, and perhaps somebody just needs to make better quality stuff that brings things kind of back in line with how we used to view games. So it was very much watching Vendor Satanis get banned off of drive-thru that was the onus for me to say, I'm done. I'm gonna publish my stuff instead of just keeping it locked away in my notebooks. And yeah, it's just kind of gone on from there.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Right. Yeah. It seems kind of silly. Like there were better reasons to publish it, but I think it's evolved from that for sure. It's gone beyond that scope.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely agree with you about sort of the cultural aspect, and not even to get like political about it, but when that happened, like a certain style of game just sort of evaporated, and it exists in all the older stuff. But for whatever reason, nobody was really publishing that anymore. So to me, I noticed the same thing. And I also felt like, I bet you there's a good market for people who want, like a 1970s, early 1980s feel, even if it's in modern mechanics.
Yeah. And it certainly wasn't necessarily because I wanted to bring conservative values necessarily to games. I think that might be inherent, and I could make an argument for why I think that's true. I think to typically, heroic people. When I like think about the heroes that I admire, and anyone that's followed me on X for any length of time, like anytime someone's like, post 2 characters that you really like and tag them, I do the same. My responses are always the same 2 guys. I got Kevin Sorbo's Hercules and Charles Ingalls from the original Little House on the Prairie.
Really interesting. I have mixed feelings about that show.
Little House on the Prairie?
Like, it's very wholesome, or at least I remember watching it in the 80s, and it was very wholesome. And then, like, I was watching repeats on some, high-numbered channel one time, and it was like, dang, a lot of these plots are really are really something else. Like, there's I don't know, like an old drifter in an abandoned house who's luring young girls in there and stuff, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, and the town has to deal with them, or there's the guy that there's the guy that like does the typical RPG hobo thing and like picks all of the gear off of the priest that passed out in the heat, and then goes to the town wearing his clothes. and they immediately garners the town's trust. There was a lot of hardship in that show, and I really like how Charles, through it all, ends up being a stand-up guy and a father that's worth looking up to. I think is really what's important, and how the town gets together and solves their problems with for the day and age we live in, with the word community getting thrown around a lot. The Little House on the Prairie community is exactly the type of American dream that I wish we could have today. And I really do try to do the same thing. I know all of my neighbors, and I'm really good friends with the neighbors. We're always trading. Like, legit, I've traded my electrical skills for like roofing panels. I've traded rabbit meat for bows and arrows. Helping your neighbor carry in their groceries and all that, and trying to get my kids into doing that. Because I grew up in a place where you just didn't know your neighbors. You didn't bug them. And it just felt really disconnected.
I feel you. I have lived in both types of places, and it is definitely, it's like you could choose to live an isolated existence, or you could choose to occasionally, have your neighbors bother you for a ride or feed their dog or something like that in exchange for, them having your back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know, it's just something I try to explain to people every once in a while, where it's like, well, you could live a certain way, or you could live this other way, which sounds a heck of a lot better. And it's really up to you if you choose to do that.
I just realized I tried to spell mutants, and instead I spelt mutats. Oh my goodness. I'm nervous when I draw on screen.
Doing letter work is like one thing I refuse to do by hand.
Oh yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm dyslexic, so there's a good chance I'll screw it up.
Dude, same. Cheers to all the dyslexic heroes out there. Here we go.
And the other is like I just need something I can easily replace, because I'm also very picky. So it's a matter of like, did I actually like that? Or am I going to change it like 50 times?
So this is the cover for Mutants that as it exists now.
Oh, nice.
And when I was coming up with that font, what I'll do is I set up like a totally different canvas, and I just started doodling the words and seeing like, what kind of kerning do I like? I really like tight and thick letters, and I got to do some cool things. So I was working on this one in particular, just to try to get everything like boxed out, and eventually gave the flavor of the mutants to the letters. But I think I might go for a different font for this next edition of mutants.
Very cool. Yeah, so you have played many different kinds of tabletop RPGs. I always see you talking about different genres. How do you have like a favorite that you sort of gravitate towards, or you're just up for whatever?
When I'm a player, I'm up for whatever. And a lot of that has to deal with being, I was the perpetual DM for years. And when I was a perpetual DM for years, I really liked Gamma World, or I liked Cthulhu D20. Those were my favorite. Now I know that you play Gamma World with Dungeon Delver.
Yes.
I've not had the pleasure of playing that edition. I'm a dirty, filthy casual, and this book right here, it's this camera, Gamma World, the 7th edition rulebook.
Nice.
One that I run, because this came out around the time that Fallout 3 came out.
Oh.
And I really appreciated that one. I really appreciate the art. There's actually a lot of comic artists that did the art for this book.
Very cool.
Notably, I want to say the guy that did I Hate Fairyland, I think he was in here. Oh, I could be wrong. I think one of the guys that at least worked on I Hate Fairyland was in here. So I'll have to recheck that. Give me a fact check. I'm okay with that.
So what is it? How do you like the 7th edition? I have only ever played 1st edition. I've briefly looked over 2nd, and but I haven't had a chance to check out the more modern versions.
So I heard the alternity system was good, but the 7th edition gets a lot of crap because it's built off of the same system that 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons was built off of.
Interesting.
You can tell by the D&D symbol. So this is D&D 4th edition turned into Gamma World 7th. But I really liked the format. I liked the box set that it came in. And it's got a lot going for it in terms of being able to run the kind of gonzo Hyperborean adventure, which I really love.
Nice.
Rolling up characters, it was one of the few games that really brought back actual random character generation. And then there's a cutout in the book that actually says, characters die because Gamma Terra is incredibly lethal. So if your character dies, and I mean, per the word in the book, is, let's see here if I could find it. Talks about death and dying, and it says, yeah, it's a lethal world. If your character dies, he dies. If he dies, he dies. Yes, here we go. Unlike many other role-playing games, magical healing and resurrection from death aren't common in D&D Gamma World. If your character is killed, it doesn't mean that you're a bad player. Probably does. But or that you even made a stupid decision. Well, maybe not. And it actually says that in the text. Bad luck and dangers you had no fair chance in seeing coming are just part of the game. So when your favorite mutant is blown to atoms by a warbot with a photon missile, raise a glass of Mountain Dew to his or her memory, and then get back to work rolling up your next character. Your new mutant is around the next corner waiting to join the party of heroes. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the character advancement because it didn't suffer from a lot of the same problems that 3.5 had. And I actually really liked the limited number of books that were available for it. It was very easy to contain your game when you didn't have players asking you if they could just keep adding supplements.
Yeah. It's interesting. Gamma World feels like the tabletop RPG that time forgot to me. Like, I know there's newer versions, but I very rarely hear people talking about actually playing Gamma World at all.
It was one of my favorite ones, and for a while there, my family was playing very consistently, once a week, every week, and my boys didn't get enough. And so, what was really funny is right around the time a lot of the initial hubbub, or at least the first time that I witnessed the carousel of issues, where people were talking about one time. One of my favorite things to do was like if I didn't want to tell a story out of my brain for bedtime, I would have the boys tell me a story of what their Gamma World characters were doing that day. And it was
Nice.
really cool because then when the next session came up, I'd be like, oh yeah, do you remember those radioactive radishes that your character planted and stuff? Well, they're grown and now you can eat one and you get like 1d4 health points back.
Cool.
And so that was really fun. My oldest son is very, very onto. We get him these. What are these? What are they called? They're called KiwiCo boxes because my boys are homeschooled, and my one son is very mechanically inclined. Like he needs to take things apart and figure them out. So in Gamma World, like finding ancient junk always excited him because he was like, well, I could build robots with ancient junk. And it was very, very fun just to kind of feed into that by encouraging, like, oh, what is your character doing when he's not adventuring? Oh, I did that. Do you remember that toaster that we found? Yeah. Well, I'm going to take that apart and I'm going to try to figure out how that works. And then it like leads into more homeschooling stuff where it's like, oh yeah, and then we get to learn about the resistance of conductors and how we use that to make electric ovens and toasters.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So do your kids' friends play tabletop role-playing games as well, or not so much yet?
Not so much, not yet. We do have friends that I've adopted as their aunts and uncles because I don't have many to bring to the table myself. And so like we get Auntie Denise over and she plays. And we get cousin Rachel over and Toby and they play cousin Isaac and stuff. But I'm trying to, as soon as I get done with my electrical school, this is my last 2 sessions, this Tuesday and next Tuesday.
Nice.
I really want to start like a gaming club up at the community center.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I've had. I'm sure you've heard of the Dungeon Minister.
Yeah.
Who he's got a great series about gaming with kids, and it is kind of funny because when I had him on, he's like, "How come people always want to ask me about gaming with kids?" It's like, well, that is kind of your thing, man. But
I think it's important, I was very fortunate to have gotten into it when I was younger, and I got to share that with my papa, which helped grow our relationship because he is my stepdad. I think about guys like Disco Barbarian, I believe. His mom ran his games, and now here he is this many years later trying to keep the culture that she gave to him alive. Apathy destroys a lot of the things that we love. And being able to share that, share the things that made our culture and our behaviors so great with the younger generation is very important. It's almost the purpose. It's almost what keeps me alive some days.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would go visit my grandma, especially in the summers, and of course she was born in the 30s, so she was definitely not tabletop role playing gaming.
Right.
But she liked a lot of other games and board games and poker and stuff like that. But since she grew up, and the place where she grew up was relatively poor. We're talking Appalachia. So they didn't really have the same everybody watches TV at night habit. It was still very much people would randomly show up at your house and you were expected to have snacks and, like some Coke and maybe coffee or whatever they wanted, and you would play a bunch of games.
Nice. Okay.
So I kind of, speaking of knowing your neighbors, I just realized later, like, what a great thing that was. Like, who does that anymore? If somebody just dropped by your house, wouldn't your first reaction be like, oh, what are they doing here? It wouldn't be like, oh, I got to break out the vanilla wafers.
Not my Miller wafers. Dude, I would like to say that I do that. There are some times where, like, I'm extremely groggy on a Saturday morning and I hear a knock on the door. I'm like, no. But there for the longest time, and this is another thing that I really need to get back into. We just got so busy. We would have monthly game nights at my house, and we'd invite all of the people over. And that's a really good way of building community. Games, for as long as they've existed, building friendships or tearing some of them down. Like, I think about my brother Jeremy. I love that guy, but I just don't play Catan with him anymore.
See, I always think of Monopoly. That's the game that will end friendships right there.
I actually kind of like love-hated my way into my in-laws' family with Monopoly.
Really?
Christmas with them. My brother-in-law loved to play Monopoly, and my wife was like, don't do it. Oh man, this drawing is not looking good. My wife was like, whatever you do, don't play. And I was like, no, if this is tradition, then you gotta play, right? You can't just not. And so we're playing it. It's a slog of a game. We're on like hour 6, and him and I are like deadlocked. There's no moving one way or the other. And eventually I got bored, and I looked at his son, who was like 7 or 8 at the time, and I was like, hey Trent, how'd you like Park Place? And my brother-in-law was like, you would not. And I'm like, there is something called the victory, the moral victory here. So basically threw the game and let his son win, breaking his winning streak of like 6 or 7 years.
Nice.
And and so him and I are buddies now, and we don't play Monopoly no more.
So I'm kind of wondering, we're at sort of a weird point in the tabletop role-playing game space, because there's always like a sort of like a roller coaster type graph of how much D&D dominates the industry. Like, it'll have a high point and suck all the oxygen out of almost every other game, and then invariably they'll do themselves in and it'll come crashing down. And we seem to be like getting towards a low point where you start to have all sorts of other games that normally wouldn't be able to shine because people are looking elsewhere away from now Wizards. Is that sort of how you see it? Do you think that there are a lot of new interesting games out there, or can you see them coming up on the horizon?
I put myself in a pretty good position to be able to see a lot of what people are working on, and then just making the time to make my way through and playing them. I do think that there is a saturation in the market. Yes. And that is really unfortunate, because there are people who they don't have time to wade through a lot of the slop. And I'm of two minds of it. I was watching this really good debate between two comic artists, two comics makers. I don't think B.A. Turner actually draws. He was having a conversation.
No, he does.
Oh, he does? Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure he does.
And I like B.A. Turner. And I also like Tyler Draws. They're both very successful, and there are ways to look up to those people. But the conversation was quantity over quality, and I think BA makes a really good point where you're like, well, you shouldn't be so selfish to put and add to the amount of crap that people have to wade through. You should be better than that. If you're going to release crap, you shouldn't, basically. And I think you can feel that way, but you also are not the arbiter of taste in terms of, I think there's a lot of stuff that is objectively crap. There was one episode that I did with my brother where we found this guy on TTRPG. He pumps out a module almost twice a day.
What?
Yes. And it's very clearly, it's AI art, and he gets he gets big booby women AI art on all the covers. And then when you read the rules have really weird inconsistencies that are very indicative of like AI logic trying to retrace paths over the span of, for his core rule sets, many days. But for like his adventure modules, it's like, I need an adventure module and it's got 2 factions in it loosely based around these ideas, is really what it reads like. AI has a way of being very circuitous in terms of like, it was a dark day, but the sun was shining bright, or it'll say a chaotic but focused line of thinking. It has a way of just undoing what it just said in order to sound more poetic.
Yeah.
And he will list the price of these adventure modules for $7.99 and then put them on sale for $1 or $1.99. And you think about how many people are like, yeah, I got $2, I could buy that. So he's got a bunch of really good sellers. And then you look at his collections where it's like the dude's got over $1,000 worth of books that you could buy from Drive-Thru across 2 different accounts. He's got 2 publisher accounts, and he's got this one bundle where it's like, oh yeah, $100 and I'll give you all 1,000 things that I've published. You're like, well, that math doesn't add up. So I can't stop that guy from doing it. The best thing that I can do is my brother bought his stuff, and then we tried to play it, and then we couldn't, and then we tried to review it, and I'm like, well, I don't know, we already put this guy on blast, so that's enough. You're more than welcome to do it. I wish for everyone to be more discerning, but again, not everybody has time to go over with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, it's I agree. Tyler's an interesting guy. I don't know if you've talked to him yet, but
not personally. I've been following him on X for long enough.
I've had him on a couple times. He's a lot of fun, and he's real interesting. I do have some sympathies to putting out at least consistently and closer together. I shouldn't say closer together, like not taking too long.
Yeah.
To put things out. Like if we're talking about comic books specifically, they used to be monthly, or at least every other month, and now yes, if you order something on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Fund My Comic, the quality is generally going to be better, but maybe you'll get a book a year.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I remember when I came out with my first official book, I did it as part of a game jam, and it was one of Avenger Satanis's first Chalt game jam. And so I made this book called The Boy from Mez Tejas, which was basically a South Park style parody of all the headlines that I had read the year previous. And I had a month to put it together. and that's including the drawing. As a matter of fact, I have it right here. All of the drawing, all of the writing, and then doing one test run of it before I actually published it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, I was able to do that in a month. At the time, I had been working on my game Mutants for years. Total sitting down and working on Mutants specifically, we're looking at like 3.5, but kind of off and on and non-committally for the better part of 6 or 7, right? And yeah, when I did the Boy from Tejas, I released Mutants not long after that, and I was like, yeah, man, I don't see why I couldn't do a book a quarter. And then I started getting asked to do art commissions, and then I still have my electrical school, and I'm chairman of the Historic Preservation Committee here in town, and I've got all this housing project that I got to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, that's way too lofty of a goal. But comics are a considerably different medium.
Yes.
And I wanted to do a webtoon for the longest time, but I'm not very good at drawing the same character over and over again.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I am terrible at I'm terrible at sticking to that timeline. I'm just really glad that my commission art clients put up with me, but I have been told that I'm not the worst, so that's good news. Those damn Twitter artists.
Oh man, don't get me started.
Oh, I'm gonna get you started. If not on your show, I'm gonna get you started on my show. I'm gonna have you on for Inking and Thinking because you're like the perfect guest.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, no, it's a terrible thing to do. It's very poor business practice, but occasionally I will pick on the guy who stole $600 from me for art. But
he just ran away with your money.
Yeah, basically, I hired him to do 3 images. I paid 50% deposit, and because he's good. If you put his stuff up against like 1990s Jim Lee or even like Frazetta or maybe Bernie Wrightson, his stuff would not look out of place.
Oh wow!
So he's good, but he just never did anything. And I published or I was doing the Kickstarter for my campaign guide last year, and I'm like, yo, dude, it's 4 years. What's going on? Give me my money back if you're not gonna actually give me something.
4 years?
4 years.
Oh my gosh, man. See, and that's the reason why I can't do a Kickstarter like that. Dear friend Victor Gorchev, he was him and like the Basic Expert, and they were telling me that I would have a really good one if I would just do it. But I really, if I did do it, I first off, I'd want it to be 99.9% done before I hit the go live or the launch button.
You could do that.
And then the other thing is like, I have a very clear idea of what I want my product to look like in my head. And unfortunately, I'm like ready and willing to just bash my head against the wall until I find somebody that can do it here in the States. And that's been almost a near fruitless labor so far.
Yeah, So Ultra TTRPG says it's the Twitter artists that constantly bitch about AI that just makes me support AI even more. So what's your? I'm curious. As a guy who actually draws things, and you do earn money from commissions. What's your thinking of AI?
For the sake of sounding like one of those whiny AI artists, because I'm very empathetic to that. I've had some friends that didn't know that I existed before and couldn't get an artist because of who they were and what they thought about people going into certain bathrooms, right? So I'm very empathetic to that. And again, growing up poor, I'm also very empathetic to not being able to afford certain things. Like, you have to be able to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And AI does do that. AI does give you the ability to get very far. I do think a lot of people sleep on Creative Commons art because there's a lot of really good art out there that's just forgotten.
Yeah.
That, old masters of art worked for years to make. And it's out there, a lot of it for free that you can just use. You don't have to pay anybody. And then again, bringing up TBE is making some really amazing commercial free art that all you have to do is credit him as using the art. You can get really far with that. Now, again, saying like I did, where I'm not necessarily slamming people for using it. I wish that we didn't have to, but I do think that AI as a whole is the anti-life equation. For all you dark side fans out there, and not necessarily because it's AI art, but because it's slowly becoming the thing that takes away. It's making people doubt, right? Like, how many times have you been on X recently, or been told something, or have you shown somebody something and they're like, "That's not real, that's AI." The anti-life equation, the first step was making people doubt the information presented to them always and forever.
Yeah. My stuff is still bad enough that people are like, yeah, I can believe someone drew that.
Right? I don't know, man. A lot of AI art still is, the longer you look at it, the worse it gets. It's like every piece that I've seen, the only time I've seen AI art be used really effectively was the Red Room produced in Sanatorium, which was a really good horror supplement based off of what was that movie? I wanted to watch it, but I haven't seen it yet. It was a like a case for unwell, or it was a movie about people in a sanatorium, like a bathhouse loosely disguised as, or a insane asylum loosely disguised as a bathhouse. Because of where AI art was at the time, it was very lucid, you know what I mean? And it was uneasy. It made you feel uneasy when you looked at it. And so for the theme of the adventure and the setting, it worked out really well. I'm not necessarily threatened by AI art. Mostly because it can't do what I can do yet. And I would definitely say, don't say that I'm still bad enough that I get away with it. Because sometimes it's those little human mistakes that really make something good. Because when you can't draw something, you're going to simulate that you can draw something until it looks good. And sometimes that causes you to bend the rules. But yeah, I mean, I'm like drowning in commission offers right now, to the point where I actually had to tell people, like, I will never finish my own books if I keep taking on commissions. So I finished up my commission for Diversity in Dragons. I got to do 5 portraits for his Isle of the Cursed book that'll be coming out. I'm so excited for that. And then I finished up some quick commissions for Harmony Ginger and the Black Lodge Games Boys, and Todd of Blackwall Games. Well, I didn't finish his. Todd's are the last commissions I'll be taking for like a little while. And then after that, most of my streams are going to be dedicated to drawing stuff for mutants, as I put together a box set for that. And then I'm good. So yeah, I'm not necessarily threatened by AI art. I think that I do think that people should ask for more. And to be honest, this is a person that has had some of my work ripped off already by AI artists, so to speak. And it's really funny, like some of the AI bros, for the same reason that Ultra was saying, like, X artists are the reason why he likes AI and AI art more.
Mm-hmm.
It's and Ultra is not an offender. Ultra's like one of my favorite people. But there
Sure.
are some AI bros that, like, that's their business on X, is they will take Patreon monthly supporters, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, here's my big boob elf woman, and if you like this, subscribe to my Patreon, and you'll get more and uncensored big boob elf woman," right? And I'm like, but that's AI. No, it's not. And I mean, even 2 years ago, to a year ago, you could tell, right? It's like, why is the signature block always conveniently over the one visible hand that's in the image? And why does the woman look like she's 50 foot tall and there's like a half a foot tall guy, a foot behind her? Why do the floor slats not join up from one side to the next? And they're like, well, bro, it is AI, but I edit it. I'm like, well, if you're going to be charging $5-10 a month from so many people, get better, I guess. But don't tell me it's not AI because you generated it and then you sloppily edited it into place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there will always be money in it, or I should say financially viable for people to actually draw, in traditional styles. Just like there will always be someone who will pay $1,000 for a pair of leather shoes from some little old Italian man living in the Alps.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally have two problems with AI. One is I don't think it's right that they sample people's work without their express permission. So for me, if they did, actually, the music we're listening to now is from a company called Epidemic Sound, and they have recently released AI voiceover. And it's super cool because they actually hired people to go in and do recordings for it.
Specifically for that recording, right?
Yeah.
For this purpose.
Yeah, and when you use one of their voices, they get a payment for it, which I think is cool. And I think that would be, a viable way in the future if you wanted to license your style. Like, oh, I want my artwork to look like Patty O did it. You would theoretically get a kickback. Or, if like Jim Lee, if God forbid he got Parkinson's and he couldn't draw anymore, he could potentially sell his whole library and like, oh, you want the Jim Lee style? Well, you have to use, whatever mid Journey version 8 or something. So, I would see that as a selling point, both for the AI companies and the person doing it, and for people who want to use that particular style.
Yeah.
The second problem I have is like, which is a separate issue. If I told you I ran a marathon, you would be kind of impressed, right?
For sure.
Right? Even if my time was crap, you'd be like, wow, you actually finished 26 miles. That's great. Now, what if somebody came to you and said, I drove 26 miles? Would you be impressed?
No, not as quite.
So
I'm back on that as a little bit of a scaling issue. So like I'm always impressed by people who ink physically. Like that's something that I think is, that is a traditional art so far and beyond and above what I'm capable of right now. I have to do all my inking digitally, because if I made a mistake, no, I gotta like redo the whole piece. I watched do you know the Twitter artist Gabloni?
No, I don't know.
Gabloni. He does kind of like an anime style, black and white, but all of his characters are very old school inspired fantasy drawings. So like he does some very beautiful elf women. I think he just did like an orc berserker. That's a great follow. It's Gabloni. So imagine the word baloney with gob in front of it. So it's like GOBLOGNA, GOBOLNA. Anyway, and Oscar Mayer has a name. Anyway, so I watched him post a picture and was like, "Oh yeah, here's my whip." And then like the next day, he's inking by hand, and he goes, "I made a mistake. This line was like way off, so I'm gonna restart." He took his original pencils, put them on a light box, and then redid the pencils so that way he could restart the inking all the way through. And I was like, that's amazing. That's a dedication to form and function that I could not commit to, right? But I think, case in point, you guys might see some stuff. So you might see some stuff for Diversity and Dragons right now that you're not supposed to see. I don't know. But this Lady Brenna piece that I did, there's no digital tools really going on here. This is a very basic pencil brush. It's actually like the most basic Procreate pencil brush, and just building those lines up over time. There was no like rescaling. There was no. I don't even think I hit the undo button. Everything was traditionally erased. And what I really liked about this piece was that it brought me back to being like the poor artist when all of my sketches were either mechanical pencil or a like ballpoint pen on lined paper. So this is like one of the first digital pieces that I did that really made me feel and brought me back to when I first found out that I loved drawing.
Nice.
So there's stuff like that, and then there's I don't know if I could show that off either. Oh, and then there's stuff like my new T-shirt, White Dwarf Summer. Woo! You can buy White Dwarf Summer. It's only available for summer. So you either get it or you don't. If somebody told me that they colored this, I would be considerably less impressed than if somebody said I painted that with acrylics, on canvas. In terms of, going back to your analogy of, now where did I put my drawing at? I can't remember. Oh, it's right here. Oh no, not that one. Just, going back to your analogy of like driving versus actually running a marathon. If you had said, "Oh, I ran this marathon," but then I looked at like your geo tracker on your phone, and yes, you started at the start line and you made it to the finish line, but the track went like this big squiggly line around the park, and then you went like that, but instead all you did was kind of like just circle around and then come right back through. That's the way that I feel like AI art is sometimes.
Yeah. Well, my problem is more with the artists. It's the artists who demand, like, well, I also went 26 miles, therefore you should call me an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ran the same
5 words.
Exactly. And it's a great tool. I've seen, because Disco Barbarian says something really great. AI is a tool. Yeah. There's this one cat on Rumble whose channel I really adore, and Ultra and I play a game with him. He's making a game. He goes by the name of Dice Bag Games, and he's writing a game called Creatures. And every Saturday he does live art streams, and every once in a while he will use AI to help him come up with color palettes and composition.
Yeah.
And then he does like paint overs. Not a whole lot unlike when some digital artists will take pictures of like staircases, and they do digital paint overs.
Yeah, exactly.
So he does stuff like that. That's using the tool.
Yes.
But saying that I made this art, no, you asked a computer to commission you the art. Like Diversity in Dragons isn't going to say, "Oh, I made this Lady Brenna piece." No, you commissioned Paddy to draw it, and you own it because you commissioned it to him. And that's what AI artists are. AI artists are AI commissioners, and who also loosely play the role of art director.
Yes. And to me, that's one of the more offending problems. Is that like there's a guy, Shad Brooks, who he on occasion will show like, oh, I did this AI in 5 minutes, to get attention from everyone who hates AI to start screaming at him. And the worst thing is, like, it's just terrible. You know what I mean? And that's to me, that's the problem with most. Like, I do agree that AI will eventually be in everybody's toolbox and pretty much everybody's workflow from some point or another, especially in the prototyping stages. But like, you still need to know what perspective is. You still need to know how many fingers somebody should have. And you need to know body proportions and whatnot, because it's like you said, AI is still wonky. And a good artist will be able to pick up, they'll be able to understand and explain to you like why this image doesn't look right. But the average person will look at it and be like, something's wrong, even though they can't put words to why that is.
I think sometimes, right? AI art, one of the great things about AI art is it looks really good when you're scrolling.
Yes.
But when you stop scrolling and you really analyze, like I said, it's like one of those highlights books or like Mad Magazine where it's like, spot the hidden objects, and then you get sucked into it. You're like, oh man, what other AI isms can I find? So yeah, I'm not worried about it. Like, even I love doing skits to advertise like my shirts, and I really want to film stuff for my modules and the games that I write, and I can film miniatures. I can take film of miniatures that I've painted on terrain that I've made by hand, and kind of like do like, and then here's some really cool pan shots of miniatures hanging out on a really well lit table with like smoke going across it, and it looks really cool. But I also I yearn to be able to do really cool commercials, like for the White Dwarf Summer line. I've already been talking to Mrs. Parlor about it, and we want to do kind of like the scene from Gladiator, right? Where Russell Crowe is like imagining himself putting his fingers to the waves of grain, and then his wife and his son are off in the distance, and then it's like him again. So for the White Dwarf Summer, I really wanted to. I mean, I've got all of my props. Kitty wants to do my makeup to make me look like a dwarf, and it's just going to be like me hanging out in like one of my dark rooms, right? Like not even a mine, but I'm going to have a pickaxe and like this hunk of obsidian that I have laying around here somewhere. I have like this big old chunk of obsidian rock, and it's just going to be like sound effects of it's going to be sound effects of like mining, and then it'll be me putting on my best grumpy dwarf sounding voice of working in the mines, and then it's gonna be like flash to Mrs. Parlor wearing like fake elf ears in the sun, and there's like kids laughing, but you don't really see everything. It's a very ephemeral, and then it's like kind of doing how Gimli is describing Galadriel, right? It's like, how fair her hair was. It was like, her hair shined like the obsidian of the mines of my home, but her skin was as fair as the sun when it first touches you exiting the mine. You know what I mean? And then it being like, and this is what we do it for, boys. And then then like the next scene is me wearing the Hawaiian t-shirt, like, and I don't drink, so I'm gonna have to get like apple soda or something like that, and like fill up a tanker of apple soda and be like, it's White Dwarf summer. So I want to do that, but I've got an iPhone and I've got my wife who wants to do makeup. You know? So even I am very allured by AI, this new VO or whatever, these AI videos that I've seen people been making. I'm like, dude, I can make a Mutants commercial where like I can use just 5 seconds of AI video. It would have to be like one scene, one cut, because I watched like this one that was 2 minutes long and it's like super jarring. Right, the cuts. Like, there was one where it's a bunch of dudes, like a bunch of SWAT guys, hanging out in a van, and like the color of the van changes every other scene, and like the main character has like different lengths of beard every other cut, and so it's like if you could use like 2 or 3 second long cuts of like a mutant jumping in the air or like a mutant opening up a loot crate. You know, I could use this in tandem with shots of the game actually being played, and I could come up with like a really good commercial, one that I could never afford to film.
Yeah.
So yeah, even I can say like I am not immune to the lure of using AI for certain purposes.
Oh, for sure. If it's not a live stream, if I'm doing some other kind of video, these days my thumbnails are all AI. You know, I just don't have the time to devote to making. I can't sit there for 5 hours just to make one thumbnail. Yeah, it's not economical.
No, it's not. Ultra is saying, Patty, I should do a Pride Month promo with your Got a Pair t-shirt. You should. You should. Michael's saying, I think Gabloni is a great artist, but I don't like his people. Something about the style of the faces. Yeah, he does. He's got a very anime style.
Well, yeah, I know everybody's got some style that they like and some style that they don't like, but
oh yeah.
Some of it's about the process, like, oh, I like the way this guy does clouds, like maybe you don't care about anything else but the clouds, and then you could take that and do something with it. All right. I think I gotta switch to putting on my readers because I'm getting into finer detail work.
So what is this piece that you're working on? It almost looks like a kind of like a witch coven.
That is exactly what it is. It is for... so I launched my campaign, Empire of the Undying Sun, last year. And as part of the Kickstarter, if you back the physical book, you're going to get 12 modules that they're kind of agnostic, where you could plop them into any setting and use them they're just meant to be like a one-shot, somewhere between 3 and 6 hours of play.
Oh, nice.
And these 3 are actually characters from the campaign guide called the Willow Sisters. But the Dungeon Delver he wrote 3 of those modules for me. And this is the last one that he wrote. So I'm trying to get that out. Hopefully by next week. So yeah, you are... The story is there are children that have gone missing, and you are heading into the dark heart of the forest, which is a swampy area, and you were looking for the Willow Sisters because you've heard that they might know something about this. And the Willow Sisters are creatures that all elves know better than to go looking for, because they are hags.
Are you allowed to call people that these days?
In Empire of the Undying Sun, we're all for that.
Yeah, I was really enjoying the talk that you were having with Dungeon Delver during Guac.
Ah, thank you.
Um,
I
was trying
totally
not to
forgot
take
what
up
we were
all.
talking about.
Yeah, I was trying not to take up all of the airtime with all of my questions, but like I
No, it's
said
fine for me.
earlier, yeah, I love running. I love running horror one shots, and Empire of the Dying Sun definitely sounds like it's right there, right up my alley.
Well, it is an entire campaign guide, but one thing that I've learned through like um, poor attrition rates in my test groups. Well, I shouldn't say test groups. There's one specific test group because I've ran a bunch where like I try to keep 6 people just to make sure that 4 always show up and we can play. And like for whatever reason, someone is always dropping out of that group, bringing us down to 5. Uh, and so one thing I realized very quickly was because the campaign guy goes from level 1 to 10. If you come in like at level 5, you have no idea what happened before. So I had to go back and I had to rewrite everything so that there's always an entry point. So that wherever, like, so you don't even have to play the first few levels if you're like, we don't like level. You Whenever somebody joins, they it will make sense that they're in that situation, that they're in that world.
Okay, I do like that. I think that is very important and very clever.
Thank you.
I would like to try to do the same now that you mentioned that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was going to say, like, I think that's a big help. I've got, all sorts of factions and this and that, but there's always some reason that, people can just generate a character based on, the information from the world, and wherever they are plugged into the game, it should make perfect sense why they're there doing something, which I find helps people a lot, players a lot with, the role playing aspect, or at least helping them to feel more invested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is a player investment is paramount for the long campaign, for running anything. And I think that's one of the reasons why I ended up loving one shots is being in the army, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you'd have single serving friends where you get along really great, but you might know each other for 6 months, and in that 6 months you have one time that you can hang out outside of work. Yep. So I got very, very adapted to trying to make the most of the time that I had with those people. And one shots, it just seemed like was the best way.
Yeah, and one shots are a lot of fun. Plus, not to go all Harmony Ginger, but so I had never really heard of one time before she started talking about it. And then she came on my channel one time, and I was like, that's cool. I in no way, shape, or form designed my campaign guide to be like that. However, I had the ideas for modules before, and it was always like, you start in place A and eventually you go to place B, right? But with the modules, you could actually start in place B, hop over to place A, and then go back to B. Like you could pick up sort of the trail anywhere you want. You can enter and exit, and that was always kind of my idea with the modules. So I think it makes it a lot easier for the people who are interested in running like a Braunstein style campaign.
Yeah, that Braunstein, all the kids are talking about that these days. It's been really interesting. I remember having read about those words in the books, but even even my papa didn't play that way. Mostly because mostly because of time constraints. And I mean, when we were playing, it was my stepsister, myself, my brother, and just gaming when we could in between, being a what do they call that, a mixed family, with stepkids and so on and so forth, and like trying to plan around like hanging out with mom and dad while we were there, on the weekends and so on and so forth. So we could really only play when we had the chance to play. So that's how it went down. And having read those books for the longest time, I very, very weird disconnect, but it always felt like something that I really wanted to do. When I was president of Dungeons and Dragons Club, I didn't know how to put it into words back then, but that's kind of what I wanted, was for my co-DMs to all play in the same world, and then at the end of the year to have a culminating event where our parties were either at odds with each other or rallied together to face one giant big bad. It didn't come to fruition the way that I wanted to, mostly because while even back then I was a huge rules as written enjoyer, I couldn't persuade my co-DMs to run the game the same way, and so like the power variance was way different between my group of players and my other co-DMs, and I was like, well, it's probably just not going to work out. I'm glad that we didn't advertise the entire year that that's what we were going to do. Otherwise, it would have been really embarrassing.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting, just seeing all the stuff that kind of comes back from OSR and 1970s, things that sort of got cast by the wayside for one reason or another. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know if it's like people have played that stuff so much that this is a way that they're still kind of playing the same thing, but in a new way. So it makes it more fun and exciting. Because like how many times can you run the same module, Like how many times can you storm Grey Castle's or Greyhawk's Keep,
Right.
Like, so that makes sense for me. I kind of makes me wonder if that's it or if there's something more intrinsic to it.
So the one like module that I've ran more than once. I've ran this particular module so many times. Gosh, and you know what? I used to remember the guy's name that wrote it right off the top of my head, and now I have to look it up. The adventure was called Something's Cooking, and it was written in the heyday of 3.5. Let's see here. Something's Cooking. Looks like it's right here. So Andy Collins? That can't be right. Hold on. Yeah, design Andy Collins, editing Tim Mohan, web production Sue Cook. So this was like back in the days where like it was right before DM's Guild, I think, was really a thing. And it's just a quick adventure. I'll read the adventure summary here. When Andalin met Gendru, it seemed a match made in heaven. Andalin was a skilled wizard with a love of a good meal, looking for an excuse to settle down from adventuring, while Gendru was a master of chef, looking to create new methods of cooking. Together they took up a quiet life of baking and brewing, content to live in a small cottage on the outskirts of town. But now, one of their experiments has gone horribly wrong, and the characters must save poor Gendru from his own delicious concoction, while defending themselves and the inhabitants of the cottage and an unwelcome invader. I've
awesome.
ran a variant of that particular adventure so many times. It's a great like 3 or 4 room dungeon, quote unquote, to take people who have never played before, or to take people that just have played and don't want to do another dungeon crawl. Maybe this is the filler episode in between you know, a couple of different missions. I love that one. I actually would like to write an homage to it, and I have. I'm sitting on one version of it, but I want to bring it back to its very kid friendly roots. But it also brings in one of the things that I do love about Dungeons and Dragons, and that's like getting people over for pizza and wings, you know. And I don't necessarily want to spoil it, but there is, you know, it is a cuisine themed adventure, and the big bad at the end is wonderful. And if you time things right, and if people, you know, if you guys want to be spoiled, I'll tell you. So I'll wait until the audience says whether or not they mind being spoiled or not. But yeah, if you time things right, it's just like the perfect get together.
So Michael Dale asks, he says he's on a small screen. What am I inking with? So this is a brush pen, which I started out with and did, most of the outlines, larger lines. And then I switched over to microns, which are felt, but they're a hard tip, kind of like a Sharpie, like the thinner Sharpies. So that's what I am using at the moment. Sorry to interrupt there.
No worries. Spoiler alert! All right, you think we're good? So the big bad at the end of the adventure is a calzone golem, which
yes.
First, like I was just like, wait, you can make golems out of like anything? Well, yeah, that's like their whole point. But if you order pizza and you play the adventure just right and you order the pizza just right, like your party can slay the calzone golem and then eat pizza like right afterwards. And that makes me excited.
That's awesome.
Before we started, I was kind of showing you my mess of a room, and I was showing you like some of the LARP swords and javelins and shields that I have laying on my floor, like just off to over here. When I was in high school, that was every weekend for me, was playing Dagger here.
Nice.
And we had this event every year in November where we would get because we were an official chapter for in Dagger here. We would get guys from New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah to travel to Las Vegas, and we rented out the park and we set up a campground, and we would do like a big barbecue. So we would fight for 3.5 days straight and camp for 2 days, and yeah, we did barbecue, and we would cook cuisine that matched stuff in honor of our friend Josh. That's kind of a tragic story. He was the king of our realm, and unfortunately he was murdered for insurance fraud. And then, so in order to honor him, because his favorite thing was Dagger here, in order to honor him, we put on the king's tourney, and that's when all these people would come down, and we used to make barbecue chicken that they would marinate with like blue curacao or something like that. where he was from, he was from Minnesota, and there was like ice giants, and so we were eating like ice mammoth fillet or whatever it was the idea. It's the reason why we dyed the chicken blue with liquor, I guess. But it was like really fun. I really I think that's really fun. I do find it a little sad that there are some people who like poo-poo on like the Dungeons and Dragons cookbook, because I always thought that was like really clever. You know, if you're gonna invite your friends over for Dungeons and Dragons, and not cook, you kind of like what you were saying at the beginning. You know, like when your friends come over and play games, you busted out the snacks.
Yeah, right.
I think
that's one thing I like about 5th edition is you have DM's inspiration. So whenever I play an in-person game, if you bring food, you automatically get DM's inspiration.
Oh, nice. Love it. Yeah, that reminds. Did you ever read the rules for the Fresh Never Frozen quest that Wendy's put out?
No, I heard about it, and I could never. It's funny because I was watching Critical Role when that came out, but I missed that episode, and then I guess they
Oh,
yanked it right away.
dude, maybe
I
that's
heard it
one of
was
the
awesome.
that's probably one of the things that I should put on my channel is play the Wendy's RPG, because it's not Dungeons and Dragons. It's its own system, like full-fledged through and through. I don't even think it uses the OGL. But there are rules specifically that if you eat Wendy's during or before play, your character gets benefits. And then they get really nasty. Like they write rules where like if you eat a taco from the kingdom of blah blah blah, then your character gets like like stomach flu or whatever.
That's awesome. I have a Halloween module like that. One year I might publish it, but it's like you get powers and you activate the powers by eating candy.
Yes.
Which sounds awesome until like you're on hour 4 and you have to gulp down more candy corns.
So
and you're like, oh, maybe it's not worth it.
I've had this idea for Mutants. So Mutants is a tabletop skirmish game, a lot like Mordheim or Old Necromunda. Are you familiar with those games?
I'm not with Old Necromunda.
Okay, but you're kind of familiar with Mordheim?
Okay. A little bit. I've never played it, but I've heard of it.
It's basically Battle Dungeons and Dragons, right? You have your characters, and one person controls a party of between 3 and maybe, I think in Old Mordheim you can go up as like 10 or 12. But that's what Mutants is. You're on a post-Forsaken planet. It's not post-apocalyptic, right? But there's like a story to that. You play a leader of a mutant gang, and you are basically fighting over what resources are left on this quarantined planet. And I want to do these linked adventures, because sometimes when people play Warhammer 40K, you play one game, you play in a tournament, and that's it. That's the game. My favorite version of playing is campaign style games where like you get a map with like it's all hexed out and you're like moving your armies to different hexes, and like holding certain hexes gives you benefits and all that stuff. Well, I want to bring that to Mutants in terms of being able to play a series of 5 to 8 linked skirmish battles where if you win or lose, it matters for the next game. It changes what benefits the player gets for the next battle. And
that's cool.
Mutants is kind of gonzo. It's a lot like if Borderlands had a baby with Fallout. So it does get a little comic book zany. But I wanted to do this one where it was Assault on Candy Queen Mountain. Are you familiar with Presidents of the United States, the band? Do you remember? Did you ever hear the song, the Cotton Candy song that they did? Okay.
No, I don't know
in that song, it's got a really great guitar riff. But in that song, they describe the devil, and they're like, "The devil, she made sweet candy, took 6 days and nights to dream, and the 7th day she rested, woke up early and made ice cream." And then they go on to describe what she looks like, and they describe her as like she's a dentist with cotton candy hair, red rope lips, or no, it's red rope hair, gumdrop lips, and cotton candy thighs. And I was like, dude, that would be like perfect. So I had this plan of like, there's the cotton candy queen, and that's like her mutant power, and then she has like these cotton candy type of like golems or creature devils, and they work a little bit like they do in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And then over the series of 5 games, it's going into Cotton Candy Mountain, trying to get as much of the technology out of there as you can. And sometimes that means you got to forsake the other mutant team. And I wanted to release it on Halloween and have there be benefits for bringing candy to the table and like anteing candy and betting and gambling off of like Snickers bars and so on and so forth. So,
Oh, that sounds awesome. That reminds me. It's a movie no one has. It's like no one has seen it. It's called The Night Rider. Writer.
okay.
It's basically a kids movie. Oh, good night, John. Where it's like a modern day Hansel and Gretel, where this boy gets kidnapped by a witch and forced to like be a slave in her house, and there's a little girl there, but it was executive produced by Sam Raimi, and the last like 20 minutes of the movie are like Sam Raimi does a children's movie where it's like a witch like straight out of Evil Dead, but like the teeth are like candy corn and the crazy hair is all like cotton candy strings. And like there's the scene where these kids are in the elevator and it's shot just like Evil Dead would have been. And this witch like bursts through the wall and vomits on them, but it's candy.
I don't like it.
I love it. It's like slushies, you know. It is amazing. Good
Netflix? Okay.
pick.
If
it's still
I
there.
have seen it. I thought I was watching something like that because I remember this kid. He was like writing horror stories in a notebook, and then he like goes downstairs, and his parents were like making fun of him or something, saying that he's like, oh, he's unsocialized, and he gets picked up by the witch, and that's what he's got to do is keep on writing scary stories. Dang it. Okay, I started watching that movie, but it was like one of those ones where I came home from school, and my wife was like, oh, I'm just previewing it to see if it's okay for the kids to watch because we're weird parents like that. And we never made our way back to it before our Netflix subscription expired. So I will remember that, and I'll see if I can't get a Netflix subscription for a bit.
It is not a Netflix specific movie, but I remember it was on Netflix.
Was it ANIGHT or was it? How'd you spell it?
Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think it was just the Night. I think it was Night Rider.
Night Rider movie. TV movie?
Let me see. I know I can find it. Sam Raimi. It's a couple years old, and he was an executive producer.
A lot of people don't realize that Sam Raimi directed a lot of the Hercules Legendary Journeys episodes.
Yes. And people don't understand, don't know his connection to Lucy Lawless as well. Oh, shoot. Now I can't find it. Let's see. Not writer. Nuts. Pretty sure it was called Night Rider. Oh, Night Books. Sorry. Night Books. That's it.
Night Books.
Yes. And it also stars Kristen Ritter, who played Jessica Jones.
Okay. Yeah, she plays the witch. Is that right? Yeah. Yep, that's who I remember. It's about what Yeah, it looks like it is a Netflix. It's got the poster, the promotional poster's got the Netflix thing on it, so.
Oh, does it?
Man, I wonder if it's still there. I'll have to look into that. Because bringing it back to Little House on the Prairie, Netflix is remaking Little House on the Prairie.
That fills me with dread.
I make some funny jokes. But they showed off who they got cast for the family, and Carolyn, the mom, is an actual ginger.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, they finally fired their dyslexic casting director." Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know. I don't know. They did well, I think they did it in with a Canadian TV company, but there was the Anne with an E series.
Is that the one that had
It was Anne
right?
of Green
I think
Gables.
my wife was liking that so far. I don't know how much she actually was familiar with the original source.
The first season of it wasn't too bad because it, I was never a huge Anne of Green Gables fan, but it was relatively tame, but sort of like told through the eyes of a child who had like a traumatic upbringing, like shuffled from one foster home to another type of thing. So that was an interesting take on it. But the problem for me was that after that first season, it just got like absolutely nuts. And then it was like, this is Canada, right? So they didn't have slavery, but there was like a former slave from the US who moved up there. And then like that became one of the main stories. And then there was like Native Americans around. That was one of the main stories. And it got to the point where it's like, is Anne even in this show anymore? And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen to Little House on the Prairie. Like,
yeah, because there was a couple episodes that are just ripe for the picking. Like there was the episode where the little black boy shows up to town one day, and they have to prove that he's not like a child slave or something like that.
Yeah. So I don't know.
One of the things that I am concerned about is religion was a huge, like specifically Christianity is integral.
Yes.
Like you cannot have Little House on the Prairie without the Christianity, and I don't think Netflix has the stomach to do those stories right. Like the episode where Laura ends up running away because the baby brother dies so young.
Mm-hmm.
And she runs away to the mountain and she finds a homeless stranger there. And there's a lot of like questioning, like, oh, well, was that God taking care of Laura for, the past couple of weeks that she was on this mountaintop by herself? And I don't think you can tell a story about a little girl being with a strange old man on top of a mountain by themselves these days without the connotation of where people are going to take that logically. And that's really sad. And I feel the same way. Like, and when my wife was pregnant, I was deployed, and I was like inundated, just story after story on Facebook about kids that were not taken care of the way that they should be. And as a father, growing up with that and like really seeing what's happened in the world, and there's some stuff that happened to me when I was growing up, I'm very protective of my kids to the point where, some people would make fun of me, like, oh, you're a helicopter parent, you need to let your kids go outside and get beat up and play in the dirt. It's like, I do that. I just do it with them. Mostly because I have a lot of fun when I do it too, but also because I think it's gotten way too easy these days for people to get away with that nonsense, and I won't have none of it. Personally.
It's Netflix also has the Lion, or not the Lion, Narnia. They're supposedly developing something, and it's like, oh god, it's like Disney with the last Daredevil series, and the whole series is like him questioning if it's morally right for him to be a vigilante and beat the crap out of bad people. And it's like, who they dropped out? They dropped out the priest. Like, oh my god, who would have been better for him to talk to than a priest?
Yeah.
But that does that makes me wonder. Getting back to tabletop role-playing games, how do you, when you're running, like, let's say a medieval fantasy game, how do you treat religion in your games? Because to me, the way religion is treated in most modern D&D campaigns and games is just aberrant. I do not like it
Are
in
you
any way, shape, or form.
saying like they always make the religious people the bad guy? Is that what you mean by aberrant? Or...
Not even just that. It's more like, there's people who play clerics, and they'll talk about their god with all the enthusiasm of saying they're on a Tuesday night bowling league.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that's something that really cheeses me off, because I understand like that's the way things are now, but like even if you go back to when Gary wrote D&D, most people were going to church on Sundays, and most people they did more with their church organization than just go to church. There would be like Bible studies. There was always like, okay, we're going to help the homeless. We're going to run this potluck or bingo or whatever your flavor of church was into. But there was a lot more of a community aspect to it. So to have people like, oh yeah, I worship this God, like, okay, if you're in a territory where they want to kill people who worship that God, yeah, don't
Right.
mention that too loudly. But just in a normal game, like, why? So for me, it's I always I have like a 4-point method to getting people to play better religious characters, but I'm just curious how you run them in your campaign.
That so at the time that I was running a lot of games, like for Dungeons and Dragons Club, I think I was a lot of that frame of mind where, I think the 3.5 rules are very specific, where like if you're a cleric or you're a paladin, your character is very devout for whatever pantheon that they worship. But at the time, I was like, yeah, well, I'm not going to pigeonhole people because we're playing in like this loose setting and not everyone's having the same gods, and so it is kind of what it is. When you're playing a game like Gamma World, at least the way that I was running it, that wasn't something that came up. And then when you're playing stuff like Cthulhu D20, your religions are very much like cults. So there was there was characters that could go to church to gain some of their sanity back, or to get some buff, like spiritual buff, that I would never tell my players about. But as far as like players exercising their character's religion, that's not something that I've really thought about much, and now I'm probably gonna have to do that in my game. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand to most people it's not a very interesting issue, but it's something that always bothered
I think it is an interesting issue. And like I said, one that I realized that, it is kind of funny that I didn't think about much. Or, I mean, even in the recent days with the man that I've become, that I haven't made it that big of a deal. I know that I don't necessarily want to push religion through my games so much as I want people to feel comfortable, experiencing the game if they need to experience it with their religion in mind, so long as they're not ruining the game for everyone else. I think I'd be okay with that. As far as the players go, I think as part of for the same reason why alignment was important when it came out, when it was being written into games, it makes sense why you need to hold characters that choose to be healers and clerics, or especially paladins. You need to hold them very much to the flame about their character sincerely exercising their religion. Otherwise, they shouldn't have access to healing magic. Healing magic is an awesome power. It's an incredible power. It should not be wielded lightly.
Yeah, that's one of the things for me. Like, if you are going against whatever god your player is worshiping, if you go against what they want, that's it. They revoke your powers. You can't call on them, because unlike a wizard who studies and is able to bend natural laws to his will, a cleric really doesn't have any powers other than what their god gives them.
Yep. Yeah, and for the same reason why wizards have like spell chance failure, when you as a cleric heal somebody using the divine gift of your god, and then that person goes off and is like, oh yeah, and then I'm gonna go stab this homeless woman. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
Okay, well, that guy would be dead if it weren't for you intervening. Maybe perhaps you're wielding your healing magic inappropriately, and we need to take that away. That makes a lot of sense. How is it done with Empire of the Undying Sun? How's that done with Empire of the Undying Sun? Do you have rules specifically written for how characters should practice their faith?
I have guidelines. I find that people like guidelines more than rules. So I describe in there's basically 4 points, but so Empire of the Undying Sun is a little bit different than most D&D games, where like you'll see there's like a pantheon that created the world and whatnot, but for some reason it's a pantheon that's like universal to the whole world, which is total. For us, it's like you could go to the next state over and they would have different beliefs. Even if we're talking Christianity, like one town over, they've got like a different flavor of Christianity going on there. So for me, I try to make it more like Bronze Age, where each town or region has their own gods. So you could have like 5 religious themed players all worshiping storm gods, and there's 5 different storm gods. So that's one thing. But I recommend that the DM talk to the players like, okay, you want to be a cleric. What kind of god do you want to worship? And then they can decide. And then I've got a 4-point plan. So first is prayer, where you have to do some kind of prayer. It could be every night you get on your knees. Like Muslims will pray 5 times a day. In the Middle Ages, Catholics used to have to go to church 3 times a day. It could be interpretive dance. It could be through singing. Buddhists have little prayer flags that they put up. So between the DM and the player, you should decide what it is and the frequency. So it could be you have to pray every day. Maybe you only have to pray once a year, but it's a month-long process where it's 100% dedicated to prayer. So that character is out of commission for that month. So let the player decide that. The second is acts of service, which is kind of how your player's religion reacts to the outside world. So most religions have like some form of almsgiving in our world. So it could be that. It could be you give food to people that you meet. It could be you have healing powers. So it could be you have to use that for community benefits every so often. So something like that. The third, which I think is very important, is tithing. So, I think most people are familiar with like a 10% Christian tithe. But it could be whatever. It could be 50%. It could be you have a vow of poverty. It's 100%. You're giving away, and it doesn't necessarily have to be cash. So I've got one player. He worships. He took a brewing skill, So he makes alcohol, and he worships this goddess of life. And she's also a goddess of the harvest and fertility. So he makes alcohol that he gives for free to the public. And she is very happy because drunk people smash, and she wants more life. So he has to go out giving alcohol, all the time, which sometimes may get him in trouble. And the fourth would be acts of devotion. So this is like you'd see in the Middle Ages, people would go from town to town flagellating themselves to ask God for forgiveness against the plague. It could be getting like tattoos or branding or something like that. But that's something within your own religion to show how devout you are. So, I mean, I think if you have those four things, and the players should be in on it, sort of choosing what, as much as possible, like what they want to do. I think you get a lot more religious-oriented play.
Do you ever have the one where you were talking about at least one day that of the year that you have to spend it devoted to prayer? Do you find that a lot of players choose that option thinking that it's not going to come up?
No, I find that most players prefer like a daily thing, because they'll do it during like a short rest or like a long rest has, technically you only need to sleep 6 hours. You could do 2 hours doing whatever. So that's what the smart ones do, in my opinion. Because if you say like, okay, well, one, like the not the ROTC, the reserves, 1 weekend a month. Well, okay, if you're in a dungeon and that weekend comes up, like you better hope there aren't a lot of wandering monsters.
Take away your prayers, kid. Say your prayers.
Exactly. So, but for me, that helps a lot. But I do know that religion makes people really uncomfortable. Some years ago, I was playing a monk, and he would go around, and he was a devotee of the way, and he would go around like asking people if they knew the way, and he would hand out like pamphlets and stuff.
Hell yeah.
And it's funny because when I started playing, like none of us knew each other. So like people were a little weirded out that I would just do that in game all the time. How did your
monk afford the non-printing press? Did he make all of those brochures by hand? That's dedication.
Yes, he did. He did make them all by hand. He, on his downtime, like when he had money and writing supplies, I think, however, I had some background where he started out with some. So he would like, before bed, make up these pamphlets. And the thing is, he was very stupid as well, very low intelligence. So they were like, really bad manga versions of like why you should worship the way.
Okay. That's awesome. As Ultra said, he bought mini dice. He bought mini dice for the game, like You Got a Pair commercial. Oh, okay, nice. And then Michael was asking me, how many layers do I normally work with? That depends. So this piece that I've been drawing with Yang today, I've actually just been using as a sketchbook, where each layer is like a new page. So instead of like starting a new document, each layer is a drawing. Some worse than others, like that one's terrible, but this one was actually coming along really good. And I draw until the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm not really liking how this is looking. And then instead of like scrapping it, because I've scrapped a lot of really good ideas, I'll just start a new layer, make the older layer invisible, and then kind of take the idea I was just working on in a different direction, and then draw until I don't like drawing it anymore.
Oh yeah, Michael asked me earlier. I'm sorry, I forgot. Got off track. He had asked me, do I use? Oh, here we go. Do you ever use an actual inkwell or just better practice with the newer tech pens? I do. I like them. I was talking to Patty before the show. Right now in my office, I only have one drafting table, and everything has to fit on it, including my computer and the light box. And it's like got money and a roll of tape, and it's a tax form I got to fill out, and like all sorts of other crap on it. So I don't like. It's better to set up the table on an angle and use the ink in either the pen with nibs or a brush. It's I just don't have the room, so that's why I'm using these pens. And there are certain benefits, like with this brush pen. I don't know what the heck is in here, but this ink dries super fast. Like, there's no ink on my hand. I haven't smudged anything all night. This thing is great. It's from Japan. I don't know what's in it, but man, is it good. And it's the same thing with these Micron pens. They dry quick, so it's a lot less odds that I will screw something up big time. I don't know. Once I finally get my office set up correctly, I do want to go back to dip pens and brushes. But for the moment, this is what I got.
For me, the layers question, I know that there's some extra layers on here, but there's nothing on them. I don't know why they're here, but everything was drawn on the one layer. And I really like the way that looks. There's some other pieces that I've got in here that are done on the one layer. I think this one was all done on one layer, and I did this one. And I was talking to a feller that was making a Redwall themed game. Very well put together. But then there's like some things like the White Dwarf Summer, where not only do I have so many layers, but I have multiple copies that kind of like are a save state. Case in point, let's see, I think this one was the final version, and that one says it's one layer because I compiled all of the layers just to make sure that there wasn't any stray marks before I uploaded the work to the t-shirt. Versus something like this one, you could see like I've got layers down to like the sunburn blush that he has on his cheeks and his nose are on their own layer, just so that way if I don't like that design decision, I don't have to worry about interrupting the work beneath it. I don't do color work a lot. This is actually one of the few. This is one of the first times that I've done this much color work on people. The only other time that I've done this much color work was on DM Blackwall's map for his Horde Wars Advanced book. And that was the process.
Nice.
One of the other funny things was this drawing right here. I needed a Hawaiian kind of motif to put on the dwarf shirt. And I ended up drawing this one, and so this one is supposed to have a couple of different layers. Let me see. Yeah, so this one, like, I've got the dice drawn out, and like the different colors of the dice are on their own layer, as I was like practicing doing shading and filling in the blips. So the blips are their own thing. But I learned a lot about different layer types. And now I don't know how to turn them all on. There we go. Yeah, I learned a lot about different layer types doing the White Dwarf Summer line. And I really needed to do that because I want to do color covers for my books moving forward. I might do I also did Lord Mateus's thumbnail or splash image for his stream after Legion of Myth. This was another one of those times where like I did a lot of color, and I think there's layers for like everything, because when you do commission work, when I do commission work, I'm always updating my client. So like I'll send 3 or 4 different thumbnails to the client that I tried to draw in less than 30 minutes, and then let them pick which poses they like. And then as I get to like all the line work done, I'll send off, how do you like this line work? Oh yeah, the line work's good. Yeah. Oh, you change this. And then I do the flats. So then if they like the flat colors, then we're good. And then I'll do the details, and then we can talk about stuff from there.
The flats are something I never like showing people.
Oh no?
Because I don't know, for me you got to be real careful when you're dealing with clients, because some are not like, if you're used to dealing with someone who commissions a lot of art, or they've studied art, it's not a problem. The problem is you can show that to someone who's not familiar with working with artists, and they'll be like, oh my God, that's how it looks. Oh my, that's horrible. You know, but you're like, well, I haven't done the shading. I haven't done this and that. So like usually, you know, I let them pick color palettes, but I don't show them until I have more done.
Interesting. Yeah. For the White Dwarf Summer, I was originally going for a, what's her name from Sandlot? Cindy Peppercorn, the lifeguard. But I realized that I can't draw blonde hair, so I'm gonna have to practice drawing blonde hair later. And what I didn't want to happen was for me to let the beginning of summer escape me. So I just made the command decision to draw black hair, because I've drawn enough black hair to just have it done.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I do get weirded out sending clients updated versions of their stuff, because I kind of like what you were saying. Is like, I get it. Sometimes people just don't know any better. Oh no, did I just mess something up? I feel like a bunch of my layers are gone. Oh no, there they are. This doesn't feel like the complete version of this drawing that it was. I don't know which layer I'm missing to get it there. Anyway, that's the reason why I save copies, because you never know with digital art, you know, you're gonna load it in. But yeah, I saved the multiple layers. Like I collaborated with a beloved 40K account on Twitter at SpaceShark23, and he's just a really funny guy. I thought, oh shoot, you know what would be really fun is White Shark Summer. Because he's always the gimmick of his account is he's a shark space marine who loves his elven women, and it didn't take much to make the dwarf into a shark man, and did that one. So having multiple layers can be really nice. Can be really nice. I think this one I actually have a whole bunch of different layers, because the idea, one of the things that I wanted to do, as I was, and Mrs. Parlor's in the chat. Hi, Kitty. But one of the things that I wanted to do is come out with more stock art and more commercial free art for people to have, like kind of like what TB was doing. So like this one, I have the pose set up, and then I was drawing new characters over the top of it. So like I have this Jin looking guy. Cool. I have this elven spirit guy, and he's totally colored.
Nice.
So he just needs to come out. But yeah, that was the idea, is to come out with different poses with different characters on top, because sometimes the hardest part for me is finding a pose. One of the things that I think that, like I said, that drew me to the Gamma World art was a lot of the art in here is very indicative of like the comic artwork, where everyone's in an action pose, and the posing is really dynamic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of perspectives that are being distorted in order to make these pieces of art pop. A lot of the same coloring techniques that were used for comics at the time were being used here. And I really like awesome dynamic poses and different points of view and stuff like that for my art. This is one of my favorite pieces right here. So this guy, it's like a
awesome.
giant human, and his armor is made out of street signs, and they're using a parking meter as a mace. And then he's got this cockroach guy who's got meat cleavers in all of his hands, and then one hand he's got a revolver. But sometimes what takes me the longest to get a drawing done is to get a good pose. And then once I get a good pose, I can do a lot with it.
Ooh.
What are the hardest poses? Oh man, dude, I'm struggling with just that today. I'm trying to work more on upshot poses. What about you?
Yeah, those are tough too. I think. Okay, so I would say getting the perspective of a pose right, especially when you're doing like with more extreme, weird angles. So technically, this woman right here, this is an upshot because the camera is a bit lower. But if you're like, at her extreme one, then you'd have to work with making it perspective. And one thing I did intentionally is there is no background because I didn't want to mess with perspective and background. So it's just that we were trying to put them in an actual scene. Like that gets real tough.
Yeah, backgrounds are a pain in my butt. I really like Todd Pickens' Shapes and Lines backgrounds.
Yeah.
So much attention to detail. And I will almost intentionally make my characters so big that you can't see backgrounds. Let's see here. Where's my mutants? Yeah. So like a couple of the backgrounds that I've done. Here's one of them where this scene here, we've got a couple of mutants that are at a shop and they're bartering for guns and weapons and stuff. And so there's a little bit going on here. We've got these mannequins that have different sets of armor on them. We've got this one guy with the metal dome cap is looking at some new shades. And then like the businessman himself, he's kind of like this skeevy looking dude who actually has the real proprietor of a shop at gunpoint underneath the counter. And gosh, I drew the characters in almost no time in comparison. But figuring out what it was I wanted to do with the background, how much detail was actually worth drawing in the background or the foreground, way too much time spent on that piece. The background that I'm really proud of is this one. So we've got a kind of like post-apocalypse Landerschrecht guy. And there's like this nondescript city background with like billboards. And there's antennas and graffiti, and there's even like this one building that's got the side of it blown out so you could see like pictures of wood paneling inside. And then he's like standing in front of all of his loot. So he's standing in front of a loot crate that's got like a rocket launcher and ammo cans and like a barrel of EU genetic material. I was really
cool.
proud of it, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that again.
I'm sure you'll find an excuse. There's always an excuse.
Yeah, I'm going to have to work on it eventually.
Well, we are coming up at actually, we are over the 2-hour mark. And I know you got a family. I'm sure you got things to do. And it's probably dinner time if you hadn't had it
Yes.
already.
It is definitely.
So, everyone, Everyone, go follow Patty at Patty O Cakes on Twitter, and that's the same on Rumble, right?
Yeah, it's Paddy's Parlor game or Paddy's Parlor. Yeah, if you just look at Paddy's Parlor on Rumble, I should be the first one that pops up.
Multiple streams every week, games, drawing, painting minis, all sorts of good entertainment. If you're new to this channel and you're watching, come on over to YouTube at Yang Yan Zhao 4. Give me a sub over there. I'm also on Rumble at Yang Yan Zhao, but I have like 13 followers and nobody gets notifications. So YouTube is probably your best bet, if not Twitter. And we'll have more people coming soon. Patty, thanks for coming. Thanks for the draw.
Oh yeah, I wish I could say that I had drawn that all this entire stream, but I was kind of all over the place. I'm really grateful for you having me. Thank you so much. Oh, I lost you. I don't know if you dropped your mic when you dropped that other camera. There it is. I remember. It's a meeting of the bald minds.
Yeah, the mic was on the other camera. So thanks for coming. Hopefully we'll have you back before too long.
Sounds great. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone, and my apologies to the missus.
No worries.